Hi, everybody. It's Miss Boyce and Miss Dow. Hope everyone's doing well. So today we're doing 9.3. Oh, you know what? I put the wrong thing. 9.3 part 2 notes. Okay, so what we did yesterday was 9.3, or what we did the other day was 9.3 part 1 notes, where we were solving our square roots. So we're still doing the same thing. We're still going to be using our square roots, but our equations just look a little different. If you see here, right? What do you notice in these that weren't in the other ones from the previous notes? That's right, parentheses, very good. Okay, so remember the other day, the main part of the notes, well, one of the main part of the notes, right? We started was get the x squared by itself, right? Get the x squared by itself. So this is very similar, okay? So that's why I'm going to put it together here. So the star for today is get the squared part still by itself. But in this case, notice the squared part is now, the squared part is actually in parentheses. So we're going to write get the squared part by itself. And again, in this case, get the parentheses by itself before taking the square root. And through the example, I'll explain obviously what I mean here a little bit clearer. And then again, the same star from the other day that we still have to use is we still need a plus or minus. Need a plus or plus minus slash minus. Not as an answer, but when we take the square root, okay? When we take a square root. So let me be a little bit more clear based on the example. So let's head up here, okay? So is my squared part by itself? Yeah, it is, because why? Nothing's outside of the parentheses besides the squared, right? The parentheses are totally by itself. There's no plus over here. There's no number in front. We're good. So at this point, we can actually take the square root of both sides. So let's do that. Let's take the square root here. Let's take the square root here. Okay, so when I take the square root here, remember our square root and our squared cancel each other out. That's why we're doing it. So what are we left with? We get x minus 1 is equal to, sorry, x minus 1 is equal to, this is the part I'm talking about. When you take the square root of a number, you need the plus or minus. So we're going to set up two different equations. I'm going to jot that down here in a minute. So we have x minus 1 is equal to, we're going to write positive 5, right? But then we also need x minus 1 equals a negative 5, because that's my plus and minus. The square root of 25 we know is 5, but again, like we did prior to this lesson, in the first part of the lesson, we would have said it was x. If I just said x squared equals 25, then I would know that x equals plus or minus 5. So in this case, it still equals plus or minus 5. Now we're just setting up two different equations. So let's jot that down here. We're going to need two different equations set up. One being the plus, one being the minus. And now we just solve from here. Okay, so I have x minus 1 equals 5. And I'm going to put a line down the middle of it, and x minus 1 equals negative 5. And then I'm going to add my 1 to both sides, right? And now I'm just solving for x like we know how to do. So we add 1 to both sides, and we get x is equal to 6. Okay, we're going to do the same thing over here. We're still going to add 1, but in this case, I'm going to actually get a different number. No problem, right? That's okay. So again, the answer doesn't have to be the plus or minus. It just has to have in the equation, when we set it up, the plus or the minus. So we have negative 5 plus 1, and in this case, it's a negative 4. You can always check your answers. Let's be clear there. Let me go back, let me do that really quick. So if I plug in 6 up here, right, I get 6 minus 1 is 5. And what's 5 squared? 5 squared is 25. Good, so we know 6 works. Well, what if I plug in negative 4? Negative 4 minus 1 is a negative 5. But I know that a negative 5 squared is also 25, because a negative 5 times a negative 5 is positive 25. So that's why both answers work. All right, let's go to letter B. So letter B, there is an issue here. Why? Why is there an issue? Good, because the 4 is in front, right? So our parentheses are not totally by themselves yet. Here's our parentheses. We got to get them by itself. Well, the operation between the 4 and the parentheses is multiplication. So to move it to the other side, I, of course, am going to divide. So let's divide 9 divided by 4. And for right now, I'm going to keep it a fraction, and I'll tell you why in a minute, okay? So now I have x minus 3 still in my parentheses, right? Squared is equal to 9 over 4. Okay. So now that my parentheses are by themselves, nothing else is hanging out outside, right? Now I can take my square root. Right, go for it. You guys can do this too. Let's take that square root on both sides. So on the left side, I'm left with x minus 3, right? And on the right side, this goes back to simplifying radicals in 9.1. We know that the square root of 9 is 3. We know that the square root of 4 is 2. Perfect. So I have 3 over 2. But don't forget, what do I need? 2 different equations. So what's my other equation? Give it a try. Good. X minus 3 is equal to negative 3 over 2. Right? Yep. You got it. Okay, let me just move this guy down a little bit. There we go. Good. Okay. So now I'm going to add 3 to both sides. At this point, I probably will change to a fraction. This 3 over 2 because it's a nice decimal. So I'm going to add 3, and that fraction actually is 1.5. So if I add 3 to both sides, I get 3 plus 3 halves, or 3 plus 1.5, and I get x is equal to 4.5. Oh, where's my equals? There it is. I get x is equal to 4.5. Good. Okay, so that's one of my answers. Let's go over here. Remember, this is now a negative 3 halves, or a negative 1.5. So if I add 3 to both sides, so 3, add 3 here, add 3 here. Notice what I'm not changing. I'm not ever changing what's inside the parentheses. I'm only ever changing what I take the square root of on the other side, just the number side, right? So now I get 3, negative 1.5 plus 3, and you get x is equal to 1.5. So you could have left it as a fraction. Again, I thought this was a nice decimal, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, and there you are. Good. Okay, let's go to the next slide, and you're going to try it on your own. So pause me for a minute and then come back and check with me. Okay, so here we go. We take our square root, and we would have gotten, in this case, this is a, I'm going to erase that because I'll do it in typing instead. It's nicer. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger too. Okay, so I would have gotten x plus 7 is equal, I would have gotten x plus 7 is equal to plus or minus 0. But remember what we talked about in that last little section, the first part of 9.3, the square root of 0 is not plus or minus. So it's just x plus 7 equals 0. So for this answer, you should have gotten x equals negative 7. Okay, hopefully you did okay with that one. So again, your answer in this case is just one answer, x equals negative 7. And then let's look over here. Again, there's nothing on the outside, so I'm good. I can take the square root right away here, which I hope you did. And I could say that 2x plus 4 equals 6. And don't forget your second one. Here we go. 2x plus 4. Remember, the 2x plus 4 is all inside the parentheses. So that's why I'm setting all of that up, right? And then 2x plus 4 is equal to negative 6. All right? Hopefully that's what we got. When we solve this, we should have gotten x is equal to a positive 1. And over here, we should have gotten that x is equal to a negative 5. Again, you can always go back and check your answers in here. And you should have gotten those two answers. And if you checked them, it would have been correct. Okay? We're going to send these out. There's going to be a Google form for this, I believe. So do the best you can. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks, guys.